Cool. So hi, I'm Zia. Why am I here and why I talk about Pocket Agile Brain? Well, there's a lot of vilifying on Agile as it is, as a practice. And throughout my time being in production, in management, I worked in, sorry, I always think that I'm loud enough, so I don't need this. Apparently not. I worked in film production, I worked in games, I worked in graphic design and those sort of solutions. And yeah, I worked with teams, small, big, large, teams that were all in the same space or distributed across the whole world with all different time zones. And as many of you have as well, worked online with your usual colleagues that you get to normally see in office, but during the COVID, we had to sort of pivot. And I found some agile tools and techniques and methods that I feel like really work, and they work well, and they help us solve a lot of problems that we might come across during development of games. And so I wanted to share with you some of these. I just want to put out there, these are things that I have experienced, used, and adjusted to work with the stuff I do and the way I worked with my teams. It's not 100% by the book. And I think if you're really studying into what Agile really is, it's more like a philosophy that has some values that it's trying to stay true to. It's not meant to be a book you go by, and it's not meant to be something that you follow to the dot. Because as soon as you start doing that, you're not Agile, now you're rigid. So just to quickly get through what Agile is, there are some Agile values that is all about. And this is them. There's the 4 most important Agile values. If you want to see the longer version, you can Google Agile 12 Principles. It's basically this, but into more detail. And if there was only one thing you were to take away from what Agile philosophy is to gain shared understanding amongst all the developers of a certain product and the people who are going to interact with the product, the stakeholders. And it's not about making crazy documentations and, as I mentioned, following things by the book, but collaborating, putting interactions, human interactions over everything else, making sure that the software we release is working and valuable, and most of all, responding to change. Again, flexibility, Agile. And if there is, as I saw one of the amazing talks this conference, the only constant in games is that it's always changing. So Agile is perfect for that. So I'm gonna take a drink of water. I'm gonna run you through a few different areas where Agile can be Agile, where things that I have come across in Agile can be applied. And again, some of these are not necessarily from the Agile book, and we're gonna make our own little pocket information of the things that might be useful for us to use. So if you're making, whatever product it is, but we're all game developers here, so if you're making your game, the best thing to start with when you're drafting your idea is having a clear game vision. And that is, what is this game about? What is, who is this for? What is it not, more importantly? And there are techniques that can help us with that. So what are game pillars? It's one of the quickest and simplest way to gain some alignment on a product by defining it very clearly and explicitly what it is and what it isn't. And one of the simple ways to do this is by game pillars, which are clearly defined words, game features, images, whatever can help you see and measure, whatever you can use to measure against whether you're going the right direction still. So if it happens, and it'll happen, you start having like a feature creep, for example, the good thing to see whether that's still within your game pillars and the vision you set up for your product is to ask, does it fit? While you're drafting all these ideas, you can use the MASCO model, which is short for must have, could have, should have, could have, and won't have. It's a way of deciding priority on things. Another cool thing you can do when you're trying to sort of gather a shared understanding between your team and even your customers or your stakeholders about what this game is make a fake game box. So what it is, before you even remotely get to the point where you can start releasing your game or even thinking about whether it can get into a physical form, this is a perfect little exercise to do to really get a concise idea about what those game pillars are, what are the values, and what are the things you want to capture the audience with. And you do it by simply making a mock game box. So you make sure that it has, all of the things you would want to yell out loud on the street if you're selling your product, that the users know, this is the best combat ever, or I don't know, I haven't played games for a while. The chillest story of your lifetime. Home stuck alone during COVID? Fear no more. This game brings all your friends together on a beautiful island. And if you want to really write it home, you can give yourself a really good score from all this well-renowned game reviewers. And if you ever heard that new age stuff like Secret or something like that, maybe it works. I don't know. It'll definitely make you feel good. And if you ever stuck and feel like you don't know where to go and just want to remind yourself why you're making this game, you look at that box and you see the 10 out of a 10, and it's gonna be better. Another exercise I quite like when it's done is making propaganda posters in a way as you would in times of war or during political, battles. Times when politicians get elected. Elections, that's the one. You make similar toned posters about your game, and you spread them around your office or your workspace. And it's just a nice reminder for everyone on a team to be reminded about what is it you're working on, what is important, what should get people excited. And yeah, this is the enemy. What are you doing with your time? Another important thing, now to a little bit different area of setting up a game vision, is having set up a player persona. And this is something you will probably have multiple personas of. So what is a player persona? You basically take your target audience, and I hope you did your research, and make that target audience into one person or multiple people, where you can describe them as best as possible, following all the important information like the demographic, what is their expected income, so you know how you can price your product, their player behaviors. I like to say, for example, my behavior is just a story kind of a person. That means that I don't want to go into too many extra quests, and I don't want to be bashing the same monster 5 times over because it's so hard to beat. I just want a full experience from A to Z and not sweat through it. So it's good to know who your target audience is, what they're looking for in the game, and one of the really good techniques or tools how to make that really in front of you at all times is make player persona profiles that you can, again, print out, spread around your office, your workspace, or just if you have a shared drive with your remote teams. So this helps us empathize with the player and puts the focus on the most important thing, that is the people we're making the games for. Now, to move more into the development of the games, there are a couple things that I like to run past. Again, unfortunately, this talk is time limited, so I can't get into a nitty-gritty detail, but feel free to come and ask me after whatever you want to know. So user player stories. Just a quick show of hands, how many of you have heard that user stories have to be written in there? As a user, I wanna this, so then that. Just hands up. And hands up if you love that model. No hands up. Oh, one. Chris. Anyway, I tell you why you don't love it. Because it's taken out of context. As it's a lot of things in the teams that's trying to use Agile but aren't quite sure why and what problem they're solving with the tools and techniques they're using. User player stories were made so we get a shared understanding of what we're making and get to ask ourselves why we're making it. What is the value this brings to a player? User stories are not meant to describe technical requirements, for example, because that's really hard. And going through it being like, well, as a developer, I want to put these SDKs in. So, you know, it's not how user stories are made to be written. User stories tell the story of a player going through the feature or the narrative or anything like that by describing the actions they take and the value it provides in the end. And if you don't want to follow the who, what, why model, I mean, I have no authority over it, so I'm the most qualified to tell you, don't. If something is hurdling your progress so much so that it feels counterproductive, it's probably not being used the correct way. However, there are other things that can help you get the most of your stories and find out really what is the important part of them, and that is one of the techniques is the story mapping. It's been developed by Jeff Patton. He has an amazing, thick book about it. I put you some links into these slides. There is also a very shortened version of just the manual on how to do it. And I'll just quickly try to explain to you what it is and what it isn't. We had a workshop on Wednesday. You probably heard some interesting stories about that. I totally have PTSD from being in the same room. Anyways, now I know the fast exit out. What is story mapping? Story mapping is taking the story, whether it's on a very high level like an epic. Epic is basically just a really big story. Or even looking at the product as a whole and breaking it down, seeing what is the most important to achieve within development of that feature or a story, what is less. It helps you create and focus on what is an MVP and break down the releases or the iterations on that depending on how much resources you have, what is your budget, etc. In Agile, one of the important things is that quality cannot be sacrificed. And I mean, it shouldn't just be in Agile, it should be in everything you ever do. Never sacrifice the quality. You can sacrifice the scope, If you can, sacrifice the budget. If you're not running on a sprints, sacrifice the time boxing. Never sacrifice the quality. So yeah, what you can see here is at the top you would have your user persona, because that is who the story is written for. And that is what helps you decide what tasks and activities within the story are the most important for the player you're making this for. And then you go breaking it down by, the top row and the second top row, like user activities and user tasks, is just basically taking the most important parts of the story your player is going through, which we call the backbone. And then from there on, we're creating details on what more details a player or a user could experience. So I see I put a bank app in here. One of the good examples I often use as well is, for example, email sending app. So while if you were to send an email, it's pretty easy. You can just have something you log in, write an email, and send it off. And then adding more details and tasks that you can later decide how important they are to get into the product for the specific user could be, for example, writing an email. So some of the tasks you can do would be adding emoji, adding GIFs, adding videos, adding attachments. And those are the activities and tasks that the user does. But for you as a developer, gives you a good picture of what more work you could put into it and what more things and features you could develop, so the user can interact with it fully to whatever their needs are. So obviously a chat app for a teenager would be quite a different story to a business email box. Now, my favorite, estimating. So I used to work in software as well, and I would literally overhear this chat between managers being like, oh yeah, this guy, whatever estimate he gives me, I have to double it. Yeah, I have the same problem. This guy, I have to always cut it in half. Yeah. I'm just hearing it. I'm like, what the heck? Who the hell has time and brain space to remember exactly every person and how bad they are at the estimation in hours, so then they can go and do their really crazy mathematic formulas to finally get out a number that is somewhat close to how long it's going to take team to get done. Honestly, our estimates are the worst. If you ever looked at estimation and saw Fibonacci or t-shirt sizes and thought, why don't we just estimate in hours? Well, this is why. How long is it going to take you to clean 100 square meter house? You might have some idea, right? Because you've probably done it before. Well, how long is it going to take you to create a garden design for a 2 hectare size garden? Do you know? No. Do you? But you can tell that it's going to take longer than cleaning the house, right? Yes? Yes. Or maybe you don't know, and then you have to break it down and being like, maybe I can compare 100 square meters of cleaning to 100 square meters of garden design. And that's exactly why we use estimating in t-shirt sizes or Fibonacci scale, because ours or their estimations are really hard and often incorrect. And I don't want to be a senior manager working with 50 or more people, remembering exactly how bad they are at their own estimation and then do the mathematical calculations to get an idea. And it doesn't help anyone, because then these developers are not held to it and they never improve on their own estimations either, So using a more abstract numbers or quantifying things, it just really works better here. And I give you another example. So let's say you have a chunk of work you need to get done. And it's a similar work to something you have done before, but it's not quite the same. So you have an idea, but you're not sure. And then next to it, you have other stories or other features or chunks of work you need to get done. And those are something you haven't done before or have done a lot less of, or just the similar kinds. Our work is very creative and diverse, and we are very rarely doing the exactly same thing over and over. Therefore, the estimations in hours are really hard to give. So when you look at me, you can kind of guess that I'm like quite small. So if I were a t-shirt size, I would be somewhere between small, medium, who knows. You can't quite know, because even like going through different shops, you get different sizes. And that's kind of how estimating works. But if you put a 6 feet tall person next to me, you can tell that they're at least about 2 times bigger shirt size than me, right? And that's how t-shirt sizing or Fibonacci sizing of work works. You do not have to know how long it's gonna take, because you can kind of see what is the difference. And the more you use the system, over the time, you'll have a lot better idea about what is small for you, what is large for you. With different teams, it's going to be a different number as well. And because we're using these estimations, especially when we're working with a whole team of people with different disciplines, it would be very hard to use hours and just sum it up somehow. After a while you've been using this, you can then, if you're tracking it in hours or days later, you can get a really good idea how long does a small task take your team. And if you run out of comparisons because the t-shirt sizes are too small and there's only a few of them, you can move on to a Fibonacci scale, which has a lot more numbers to work with. It's really good. It helps sharing the understanding between teams and also stakeholders of how long something's going to take. And it's easier than getting number estimates and then being completely wrong and having a manager on your throat for it. So some of the tools you can use for estimating in these more abstract numbers, not really, is using planning poker. I really like planning poker. There are other techniques like wide Bendelli or affinity estimating, but they're all pretty much the same principle. What you do is the team has cards that have a set amount of value on them. So you can either go with Fibonacci scale like here, or you can have medium, large, small, extra large, extra small, extra large. And you play a poker in a way of you take the story, feature, task, whatever you're going to work on with your team. You discuss what work is needed to achieve it. And then everybody puts a card on a table with whatever they estimate is for how long it's going to take or how big it is. And then you see if the consensus is pretty much the same, or if there's big differences, and people discuss it again, and then you repeat it until you get to the consensus that everybody sort of agrees on. And you move from there. What I really like here is also having a coffee card. Is when you in a planning for a really long time, it's really good to just step out and go on a break. So when your team is really tired, you just pull out the coffee card, and when there's at least a third of the people in a team have the coffee card out, it's time for a break. Another thing you can do is have a card that says split or too big, or just use like extra larges for that. Basically, when a story or feature is way too large to estimate, you need to find a way to split it into smaller chunks. on, not ready, or just a question mark on a card in this means that there's not enough information to give a good estimate. So again, you need to put more work into finding out exactly what is involved in getting this feature or the story out. Spikes and exploration. I heard that this is like a term that probably just Pickbook uses as far as Wellington goes, or New Zealand. So just quickly about what that is. I think a lot of you have done spikes and exploration without knowing it, and that would be, in your case, what you call pre-production. It's basically working on the features or the stories to avoid any unknowns or wasting time when you don't know exactly what is involved, how long it's going to take, if it's even feasible, etc. I like to make two big differences between the spikes and exploration, and that is that when you're doing a spike, the outcome of a spike should be something tangible, something that you can test and have a feel for. It doesn't have to look good, it can be just gray boxes, but it's important that you can verify your idea on it and that you can really get the feel of what it's like for the user or the player to use. Example of a spike outcome would be a small prototype feature made in whatever engine you're using. You know, you build it out and you're able to run your character through. If you were trying to see whether you can have a 3D camera, for example, in your game, you know, just have a really simple obstacles and a very simple character that's probably just a ball and a 3D camera, and see how it feels and whether you would rather go with a, you know, a different angle, whatever. It's so obvious I'm not a programmer. Or if you want to try like UI flows, UX flows, something like a Figma or Adobe XD. It's XD, not a really, really laughing smiley face. I totally thought it was a smiley face when I first saw it in my life. It was my manager sending me a message, can you use Adobe XD? And I was like, why are you laughing? Which Adobe am I supposed to use? Like, is it Photoshop or Illustrator? And he's like, XD. And I'm like, why is he laughing so much? So I Googled it, and then I felt terrible. Anyway, they're really good because they have small hooks in which you can like connect them, so it really feels like you can swipe through them, and it really feels like a real thing. If you do an exploration, the outcome of it's probably just going to be like a document or spreadsheet or something. It's not as valuable, but it's still good to, you know, do your research or go through the engine and find out what are the things you can use, what are the other tools on the market that you can use to achieve your goal, etc. The very important thing, though, is make sure that you time box these exercises, that you just don't get stuck on them and never deliver anything in the end. Because that can happen. It happens to all of us. And it's no use. Board. So it's good to have your work and the progress of it tracked in a certain way, or any way. And to help you with that, you can use something like a board, where you have columns just telling you how far along the work is going, and you move the tasks along the way. It's super simple. You can do physical board, which I don't like because, you know, it's really wasteful for environmental reasons, and physical boards are such a short-lived thing that it's not, I don't really see value in it. I had to put it out there, honestly, because I worry about environment. It's not like having boards of story mapping and personas and stuff, because that is probably not going to change that much, but like a task that you're going to finish in a week, you know, it's a sticky that you're going to throw out. Speaking of stickies, I just gave you tons. But there are tools online that you can use for having an online board, especially if you have a team that's scattered across the globe. Everybody who knows me knows I'm like a fanatic for Jira. It's really bad. I'm trying to like heal myself from it, but there's like an AA for it, but it's not working. I swear I have like no affiliation with Jira, and they're not paying me for this. I'm really thinking they should. I heard Monday is okay, so why not? It looks super simple. I don't like to talk about Trello because it's like, I honestly think it's just like for ultra super duper simple stuff, but there are people finding value in it, so why not? It's better than nothing. Or a spreadsheet. Just quickly, whether you're working on Kanban or Scrum board, it doesn't really matter. Just use a board of some sort. Work in progress limits. Why do we need those? Because people, as much as we like to think we're good at multitasking, we're really, really, really crap at it. Our brains just can't multitask. And it's not only about multitasking in a given moment, like me trying to talk to you while trying to read my notes, but also multitasking of just thinking about too many tasks we're working on at the same time. The best thing you can do for yourself and for the work you do is to start and finish and be done with it. And then if you need to, obviously, reiterate on it, fix some bugs, etc. But it's not good to have open a lot of tasks you're working on at the same time unless there is something blocking you in finishing the given task. So VIP limits, all it is just setting up how many tasks can be open at the given time. So if you work in a team of 5 people, let's say, you would be like, okay, there can be only 2 open tasks per person in progress, for example. So sprint focus is really bad. It just hurts quality and speed. If you don't finish the work often, the task will just add up, and then you will lead to like late iteration crunch and compromise quality. Don't do it. Live support. This is something you would probably use if you have a live game. It's basically adding a swim lane, we call these swim lanes, into your task board that is there for any urgent work that needs to be done ASAP. It might be, a really big problem on a service, crashing service, or exploit that was found and is really, really not good. That is when you put an urgent sticker into your to-do, and people who's the sticker relevant to, like for example programmers, have to stop immediately what they're doing and start working on the urgent ticket. Usually we put someone really senior into this because it's obviously gonna help us deliver the quality within a fast time, and it's not really that useful to make some poor junior struggle with like the most on fire task. It's emergent work, so it might be up to your producer or your leader or whoever to choose which of the urgent work needs to be done first and foremost. If you had, for example, testing column, if something came to an urgent column, that means testers just drop whatever they're doing and go testing. Again, it's just a small little thing you can add on a daily basis that just makes sure that the important work gets done and that there is a space for it. Sometimes I'm sure that all of these things I'm talking about is something you have heard before or done in some way, but just having a system around it helps us staying focused to it and really holding ourselves to it getting done. Rituals. So there are some really good rituals that we can do to help us facilitate development. One of them is stand-up. Why am I talking about stand-up? I am so passionate about this topic. A lot of people do stand-ups by just asking, the 3 questions, like, what did you do yesterday? What are you working on today? Are there any problems and impediments, or what are you going to work on tomorrow? And more often than not, that's not really that helpful on its own, right? The importance of stand-up is not to check on and micromanage your team and make sure that they're still working and be like, oh, why is this taking you so long? No. Importance of stand-up is about making sure that we're progressing towards our goal. Our story, our goal, remember? Our feature, the value we're providing to the customer, that is the goal. And we do stand-up to check how are we getting towards that goal? What is holding us back? What is going well? Who has finished their task super fast because it turned out to be much smaller than they thought and can help somebody else? So the important questions to ask during stand-up is, what is the goal? How we're progressing towards it? And just get, again, that shared understanding amongst the team that they still remember what the goal is and that we're still focusing on the important and we're not doing wild goose chases and we're not dropping down on equality and that everything is going smoothly. Important thing, well, I've been in stand-ups that literally took hours. And I often, what's the word? I tend to make things bigger than they are, just for theatrical. But no, I worked in a company. Every stand-up would be minimum 45 to hours, sometimes hour and a half. It was terrible. It was absolutely nothing to do with the stand-up, the things that were discussed. And one of the things that is very important to notice here is that we were sitting down in a circle. Now, why is it called stand-up? Whether you call it daily or scrum or whatever, I call it stand-up for a very good reason. There's a psychology behind standing up. You don't want to be standing up for a very long time if you don't have to. So having standing up makes everybody be really refreshed and awake and be like, let's get this done. Let's just share the most important things. And very good practice to have is during stand-up, park anything that's not important to discuss in front of everybody. So if 2 coders are having a problem they need to fix, there's never a reason to talk about it in front of all team of artists, designers, producers, audio, whatever. This is where you park that issue. You take the relevant people aside and talk about it. You don't do it during stand-ups. During stand-up, it's meant to be fast. You time box it 5 minutes, tops 10, depending on the size of a team. Obviously, if you cannot stand up for whatever other reasons, that is okay. Do the next best thing. But we're trying to just basically not get comfortable during the stand-up. The only comfortable thing during a stand-up should be the psychological safety of the team and sharing the progress and the issues during the development, but not physical comfort of being lounging. So reviews. Reviews are really good. You probably all heard about code review, but there is also an audio review you can do. It's all about regaining cohesion amongst the team, getting together, doing it as a thing you repeat every week or so, just to make sure everyone is still on the same page, everyone is still following whatever design you set up to follow. And it's a good time to collect some feedback and action on it. Sometimes we are so busy working, we don't get to get feedback often enough, and then we do a whole lot of work and find out that, it's not exactly what it was meant to be. If you do small trickles of feedback during the development, you're going to save yourself a lot of time later. Playthrough, so important. If you went to Patty's talk, you probably know. My God, play your game. There's so many developers I worked with, including myself, guilty, that don't really know what the game is like, or how it plays, how to do a certain thing in a game. It's really bad. We need to know what is this game we're making and how it feels and why we're doing the things we are doing. Really, really good practice is during your development to just, stop and play test what you made so far. And especially if it's something like a spike, great time to get a feel for it and see if you're getting to the right direction, if you're heading towards the right direction or not. Retrospective. Again, really good thing to do at the end of iteration or a development cycle like a sprint. You get time to discuss what worked, what didn't work. You can get some action points out of it. I'm sorry, I'm really rushing because I see I'm running out of time. It's good to not involve managers and producers in a team's retrospective right at the beginning. It's good to give the team some time to just discuss things amongst them, especially if you're not on the very safe hierarchical level where everybody feels that they can speak very openly about anything. And yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna run through. Feel free again to ask me questions after. Pre-mortem. Why I like pre-mortem? Because it helps us hope for the best but be ready for the worst. It's something I lead my life as. It's basically doing a post-mortem, but before everything goes down the drain. So you try to look at your plan, your development plan, and think of anything and everything that could possibly go wrong, and how can you mitigate the risk. One really good example is, for example, coming to winter season of flus, a lot of people is gonna get sick. It's really good to put that into your planning and mitigate the risk of potentially a lot of people being out of work and having to, find other ways and resources to get work done, or maybe cut the scope down. Just you don't want to. Pre-mortems help you not getting surprised. Quality, a huge topic. I'll just try to again, run through it. User testing. Get your player persona person, get someone who is like that person, and get them to test your game and get them to tell you their feedback. Watch them do the thing. Gather as much information as you can and iterate on what you've been working on. Automated testing. Please, 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 if there's anything that your tester has to do over and over again and it's always the same, find a way to automate it. This is such a waste of human brain time and knowledge and effort and skills and experience. It's terrible. One of the simple things you can do is just have an AI play through the game, take a screenshot of every state, for example, for a UI testing, then compare the images, and if they don't match, it'll send you an error, and then you can call on a tester and go actually let them look through what is happening. But there are many other ways of having automated testing. I know we run out of time. Okay. The debuffication day, there's something I came up with. If you don't already have TDD, the test-driven development, at least put this kind of TDD, which is the debuffication day. Next time I come up with a name I can say. Because it's a time when you just set aside a time in an iteration or a week and just go through the bugs and gives yourself time to do polish and fine-tuning. More often than not, we don't have time to do that. Give yourself an extra special day where that's all you do. And don't let this day to be like a dumping ground for sloppy work. That's not what it's about. Do good work all the way, but then if there's things coming up, and they will, this is a good time to go down and squash them. I'll probably just keep this, sorry. I feel like there's more important things. So meetings, how to have good meetings. I mean, they spoke about it and I don't think anyone still knows how. But good thing to start with is having a facilitator. Facilitator is the person that doesn't have a skin in your meeting or the agenda of the meeting. Why is that good? Well, because obviously it's usually people who call up a meeting are leadership roles. They might have a lot of strong opinions and voices, and it's just a human nature to, give into it somewhat. Facilitator is a person that doesn't have a skin and makes sure that everybody gets to talk. It's sort of like our social responsibility to make sure that, especially if we're a loud person, that we make space for the more quiet people, as it is for tall people to pass me things on a high shelves in a supermarket. Some good things you can do for making sure that meetings are on agenda and on time, unlike this one, is by using time boxing. So you set up a time and you just don't go over it. It's really good to set up a time box for each agenda on a list. And, if you're getting over the time, well, tough luck, I guess we have to have another meeting. Pomodoro technique is a good one. It's often used, or more often used for managing your task load. But it's basically, if we were talking about meeting, you look at the agenda, you give yourself a time box of agenda, and after you discuss it, you give yourself a short break. It's good, not break of getting on your phone, but break of discussing it. And so in a meeting setting, this would be time to just sum what we talked about and move on to a next topic. And after you do this for 4 times, you can take a big break, where you can go and get your coffee and go through your Twitter. Voting. So again, this ensures that we have, that the voices are being heard. If you want to get democratic consensus around the team, one of those voting techniques is really good. So dot voting, basically, all of the items that are being discussed, feature that you want to put in a game, agenda topics, whatever it is. Each of them would have their own box, and then you give people votes. The formula to get the right number of votes to people is take the amount of the topics, divide them by 3, and add 1. So then that number is how many votes you give to each person, and then they can go and put their votes, distribute them amongst the topics as they like. Obviously, the most points wins. Yeah. And a Roman vote is just like yes, no, and maybe. You can use it on topics like, would you like to continue this topic? Yes. Do you want this talk to end? Not sure, maybe? Yeah, give us a next topic. I think I'm being kicked out, so I don't know. There's a whole new capital on its own. So the coolest ones, lunch topic is when you get your team together during lunch, you get them pizza, whatever they want. And however, they have to discuss something they're working on. They have to share some knowledge out of their discipline among the other disciplines or inside their own discipline. It's just a good team health building, kind of fun thing to do. And it incentivizes people to talk about their work amongst the other disciplines. Love board is basically what it looks like. You just leave notes to your coworkers if there's something they done really well or something you appreciate. Polar bear is a thing from the team I worked on, Pickpock. It's amazing. It's just a thing that lifts the mood when things go wrong. So if someone breaks the build, they get a big polar bear plushie. And it's there as a reminder, a little bit of shaming reminder that they are the one that caused the trouble. But it kind of makes us laugh, and it just brings a good spirit, and that's all it's about. Nico Nico is just a very basic plan where you're trying to watch for trends in a team morale. Often you can see the team morale is really decreasing towards the end of sprint or towards having to release, because that's often when we crunch. It can point out things where we do bad planning or bad management. If the team morale is really bad during the planning time, it means that something we do around that time is incorrect. Maybe the meetings are too long and too draggy, or maybe it's just not engaging enough. So, yeah, to prevent like self-censorship or not being always like point out for being the drag, you can not use names. And that is honestly what I would do, because I totally would be the drag and I don't want people to know. All right, I'll stop here because we're getting so much of a time and I didn't give you any time for questions. And I feel bad. But if you may, with your post-its before you leave this room, just if you have anything that you liked about this talk, would like to know more of, have any feedback, or just draw me a picture, an emoji, and on your way out, there is a board in a bag. And it's basically X and Y axis, and just put it about, there's two. So one is about how engaging or boring it was. So boring is bottom and engaging is top. And then left to right, from not being any good new knowledge you gained to being a lot of good new knowledge you gained today. And just place your feedback somewhere around there. I won't be watching who did what. So don't worry. No self-censorship allowed. Just go crazy. Any feedback is really valuable for me because I want to get better at what I do. So yeah, thanks for coming.